Hey folks, it's Eric here. Greetings from Mexico, and I wanted to have this conversation about the softness of the Western North American sort of mentality of my generation, and also the sort of way that people are out of touch with their authentic emotions and opinions. And that's why you sort of see this year, especially, a lot coming out in terms of outrage, a lot coming out in terms of hatred, fear, and all of this stuff, and just sort of like judgment and all this sort of stuff. So this was brought about by one of my friends on Facebook. Have humans in westernized culture become too soft? She writes. This is a friend of mine from Facebook who I know from Toronto and my hometown. And basically, yeah, perhaps all of this prickliness is necessary right now. Yeah, and the prickles will toughen us up and thicken our skins a little. And this is where I started thinking, is the North American skin really that thin, or are North Americans really that soft? Because, the culture doesn't really seem, having lived in other places, that soft to me compared to some other cultures. It seems actually kind of rigid and armored, and sort of pent up, uptight. So I just keep finding myself, she says, receiving judgments, criticisms, and witnessing judgments of others. It is a heavily magnified subject for me right now. So it's very interesting, yeah, because this sort of society, in order for society to reach a stage of success in capitalism, it has to be very rigid, and it has to be all about the cha-ching, cha-ching more than it's about people's feelings. Because in societies where people sit around and do what they want, rather than chase the success, which comes from wounding, the need for success comes from wounding of some sort. In those societies where people don't feel that wounding and that drive towards success, you will have people more in tune with their emotions and not contributing as much to the economy in a lot of cases. Psychological studies have shown this, I believe. But the amount of sort of like, for lack of a better term, programming or brainwashing that people in North America have been subjected to by the capitalist system, by this marketing mega media machine, all our lives. It's staggering. And so it leaves people with the sort of like really strong opinions about things, and really strong sorts of like what's right and wrong. And it goes deeper into the culture as well. It goes deeper into our roots as a Western culture, as Christians, in fact, and Protestants and Catholics and stuff like that, which I'll get into in a bit. But yeah, definitely for the last 5 years, even 15, 20 years, I've seen a shift towards Western culture, towards more sort of sensitivity and sort of policing of other people's opinions and all that sort of stuff. And I don't like it. And that's one of the reasons I don't live in that part of the world anymore. So I'm the one who's escaped. And from that vantage point, I can tell you some different stuff. Yeah. So basically, yeah. So taking responsibility for the level of consciousness. Now, this friend of mine on Facebook, I see it as like really, yeah, she's really the sort of person who's working on herself a lot and trying to understand her psychology a lot and trying to develop herself a lot, and it's really inspiring to watch. So what are you protecting yourself from, again, with the wounding and shielding and all that stuff? If you feel challenged by me, I'm a teacher. Yeah, this is what actual adults will think about things, that it's interesting to be challenged in your opinions, and it's interesting to have debates with people, conflicts that resolve, that teach you things about the other person, teach you things about yourself, teach you things about humanity in general. Adult, mature people will enjoy having these types of dialogues, but people who have been sort of indoctrinated into any sort of dogmatic belief system will not enjoy this, because they're essentially just told, like, you're a child, you need to think like a child, comply to the adult's wishes, which all of us as children did. But those who want to live their adult life like that have no place in leadership of our society. And so often a lot of them do rise to leadership and rise to the heads of mobs, and whatever it is, whatever, if it's like some sort of racist right-wing mob, or some sort of like politically correct left-wing blog, it's the same to me, because it's essentially people are absolving themselves from the ability to make their own decisions because they're joining a collectivist mob. So it doesn't matter where it is on the political spectrum. What matters is that they're relinquishing their ability to make their own decisions to join a group collective mindset. Anyways, it goes really far back into history, I think. Anyways, what my response to this post was, let's just finish the post here. So yeah, you can hit the block button, blah, 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 blah. And then some people write back. And I wrote back, what this brought out of me, being someone who grew up in Canada and then left, it's a mix of too soft and too armored. We wake up every day, go to work, suppress your emotions, don't let your soul breathe. At the same time, anything too outside of the normal assembly line of your life causes great panic. That's the response that it got out of me, because I view North America as the place where mass marketing capitalism has almost completely replaced a lot of the traditional values, and people only know the success, money, money, money things. So yeah. And then she wrote back, I wonder if the armor is a byproduct of being too soft. If the skin were thick enough, no armor would be needed. This is where I'm coming from to recognize this evolutionary necessity of the crisis. So I think the metaphor here is that the skin is thick, and therefore you don't need armor, because you've already developed the ability, like with your authentic self, to process the opinions of others, process the actions of others in a way that doesn't actually constitute as a threat, doesn't appear on your radar as a threat to your own personal psychology or body or whatever. Humans have the innate capacity of enduring challenges. When we experience challenge, we learn to get ourselves into certain states in order to survive. Yeah, so it's survival mode that's being triggered in a lot of people when they get offended by things, when they shut down and don't want to discuss things, when they adhere to dogmatic ideologies. They feel the strength in the group. And if they just behave and believe like the group insists they do, then they'll be safe in numbers, and they'll be surrounded with people. The greatest human longing is for connection, and they'll be able to connect with people who are in the same unit. And we all do this to a certain point. We are all picking up opinions and habits and perspectives from people around us all the time. And that's why travel is so immensely valuable in our lives, and different perspectives and cultures and stuff like that. And that's why, us expats and nomads, really look at this stuff from a different point. And not that you can't, get those sorts of insights staying in the place where you're born. It's just a little bit harder. It's like 20 years of meditation versus 4 hours on a mushroom trip sort of metaphor. You can accomplish the same. So if one practices hiding their feelings to feel safe, that hiding will become part of the personality. If one practices leaning in, getting courage, yeah, absolutely, definitely. The more you practice going outside of your beliefs and discussing and exploring things that are outside of what you would, then the more you're just going to be able to open up to the world and become a more nuanced person with more nuanced experiences. And if all you're doing is just following the mainstream society, that's not very nuanced at all. Like, okay, capitalism will offer you several choices. Like, do you want to go to the Thai restaurant tonight or get a beefsteak at the diner? But that's not it's not a diversity of feeling, because the feeling is going to be, I ordered something and I ate food, now I'm full. I mean, different foods make you feel a different way, of course, but enough with that analogy. And getting curious about grief, things, pains will certainly serve us well throughout our lives. Yes, they do. They do, definitely. Depression is one of the most valuable tools I've ever had to improve my life. For example, fear is really good. Fear and angst and anxiety and worry and all that stuff is really good in situations where you can take actions to alter whatever you're worried about. But it's not productive if you're worrying about things that you can't control, because, well, you can't control them. And fear is like to trigger you to make changes, I suppose. There's a snake, I'm going to run over here, sort of thing. Yeah, so I think the biggest wound against my soul, this is what I wrote back. I think the biggest wound against my soul that I was encouraged to inflict upon myself. I'm taking responsibility for this because you don't get very far in this if you're blaming others. Inflict upon my soul as my upbringing in Canada was not to express my emotions honestly and to put a fake front for the purpose of keeping up appearances. So this is what we were taught in Canada. That fake front constitutes the armor I'm talking about. It's not because you're too soft, it's because you're taught not to listen to yourself and express yourself honestly for fear of what others think. Every culture has a version of this, and it's true in some way, you know, whether it's ceding to the elders in a more traditional society or tribal culture, whether, you know, it's, you know, toughen up, you know, be strong and carry on and give it your best today, no matter how you feel, sort of thing. Yeah. Uh, every culture has a version of that. Every stage of you know, human development does. But the one in North America is pretty extreme. The version of repressing yourself with little wiggle room. So I feel like Canada, in particular, where I grew up, is got a really postmodern culture without too much else to reference itself by. So I don't know. Living in other cultures healed me to an extent, but the wound and the armor that covers it will always, to an extent, be there. That's true about my upbringing. And, you know, I use that. As I said, depression was my best tool to go into my life and change it, improve it. My wound led to this great business supportive venture that I'm running and hiring people all around the world to live in places that inspire them. That's where my wound brought me, to get out of Canada and do that. My band, Eric and the Worldly Savages, took me around the world, providing people a release through my music, through my concerts, from the cultural programming box that they were in. And that became my mission, and that's the wound. So, and then I wrote, oh, well, it's a cultural phenomenon that leads to an affluent society, at least. And it's very true. As I said at the beginning of the video, in order to have an affluent society, you need to get people on a little bit of a conveyor belt, a little bit of an assembly line, and you need to get people to shut up and do work, to show up on time and feel like a piece of shit if they don't, to do what other people think is right rather than what their heart longs for. And so it's very interesting, yeah, how that all works. And then she wrote back, yes, I can almost certainly resonate with what you've written here. I'm curious, what might be the benefit of us keeping up appearances? So yeah, that stuff, the continuity of life, people showing up, being reliable, stuff getting done, goals being reached, no matter how the people feel. Everybody is expected to sacrifice a bit of themselves for this thing that we call civilization, so that we can be a part of this giant machine that is bringing, by the way, more prosperity than ever before to the world. We've escaped lots of the poverty and hunger, and now we have to deal with this shit, because once those problems, those more immediate problems of poverty and hunger go away, we get into a stage on spiral dynamics, it's called green, where we have to deal with this stuff, where we have to become sensitive again, where we have to actually have an upheaval of the brutal capitalism that brought us to this stage. Just as to get into the capitalism, global capitalist success society, we needed to get past the dogmatic religious sort of society that we had before that, where, you know, people believed in God and they followed the church leaders and all that stuff. Well, it turned into science and it turned into success that they were following, and now we're realizing that that's not making us happy. It's done us really well. Canada was a great place to grow up as a child, but it's done us you know, success. It's like, yeah, um it's kind of a toxic thing to view success through other people's eyes, rather than viewing success as like waking up in the morning and feeling good about yourself, your decisions, and the contribution that you're doing, that you're making to the people around you. So I found myself wondering, where did that come from? How far back does it go? And how can we change that? We are changing it. Just posts like this is changing it. So, okay, so if you look at spiral dynamics, it's a great system for understanding this stuff, because it starts at stage, hang on, let me bring it up. So it starts at stage beige, where you're like a junkie that needs heroin. You'll do anything that needed to get the hit, or you're someone who's starving and you will like, beg, steal, whatever it takes to do that. Then you go into purple, which is more of the tribal stage. So this is an individualist stage. This is a collectivist stage, and it oscillates between them, individualist, collective. So purple was where you had a tribe, maybe up to 200 people, maybe more, maybe less, and you basically just were in that tribe, and like a tribe in the Amazon, you had your own rituals, you had magic and all this stuff, and that had certain judgment of people, that had people giving you the evil eye and all that sort of stuff, and it's a very primitive sort of way of doing that, doing things. It still exists in some tribes, but then eventually somebody goes above the tribe and becomes like a egocentric, power-hungry sort of person, the second individualist stage, red. So this person is all concerned about power, fame, control, and sort of like willing to use violence. Then you get to blue, which is traditional society, which is, I think, what we're talking about here. Okay, blue is traditional society with religion and the state and the bureaucracy, and this is the way things are done. And our country, nationalism, our country is better than the other country. Let's go to war with them because our beliefs are better and all this stuff. And then orange is the global capitalist stage, where it's like, let's do good for everybody. Let's make lots of money. Let's be successful. The leaders will be the people who have the most money, and they will drive society through money. And then green is the stage I was talking about the most, where it's like, hey, you know what? This capitalist shit isn't making us happy. We've got lots of money, but no soul. Let's get back to the sensitive sort of, sharing, equality, exploring yourself, sharing society's resources, wanting to make the world a better place, caring about the environment, all that stuff. And then you have the other stages, which for this purpose of this video, I'm not going to go into. Just yellow is, the one I'm talking from now. So let's go back to the post. How far back does it go? And how can we change it? Back until the beginning of time, back until we were apes. And before that, survival of the fittest. But now we've reached this stage, this stage around here where it's like, okay, we've gone through this. Yeah. Now we're here as a society going into this in the West. And it's very good. And how far back does our problems are better now? Our problems, we're almost out of like survival mindset here and into the second tier, which is starting to look at the harmony of, the whole system. Anyways, the most pronounced form of Canadian cultural programming that I've witnessed is shame. And that is evident in how utterly apologetic we as a people are. Exactly. So what I want to say about where does this go back to, I think the people that founded the country of Canada have a lot to do with this. Remnants of their mentality, which was very much here, blue, basically. Traditional society, dogmatism, there's right, there's wrong, there's God, the devil, and you do what the priest says you're going to do, or else you're a bad person. So that's where the shame comes from. Now, there's two kind of religions that were dominant in the foundation of Canada: Catholicism and Protestantism, both Christianity. And, Catholics are more about this whole hierarchy, this whole like dogmatic institution of the Pope, and the worldwide organization of the church, and the church connects you to divinity, and it's very much in this blue traditional society. You do what the priest says. And the Protestantism was sort of a revision that edged a little bit into this more individualist orange stage, and that's why you had this thing called the Protestant work ethic, which basically, the Protestant work ethic basically is the prototype for Canadian or American life now, where you're going to suck it up, you're going to do hard work, you're going to contribute to a society, and you're going to get individual blessings from that. You're going to build a good life for yourself. You're not going to wait for the afterlife. You're going to build a good life for yourself here, and then in the afterlife you'll be good as well. Whereas Catholicism and this blue one is more like, divine plan assigns people their places. It's a fatalistic sort of look at, and if you're against the church, if you do something bad, have sex with someone out of marriage or anything like that, if you're gay or anything like that, then you feel guilt. And so I think the guilt of the Canadian mentality is a blend of like, it's a blend of both of these things, like the Protestant work ethic and having to suck up and be the best version of yourself, and hard work is the only way we're going to get through this sunny sort of mentality. And then the Catholic shame, which is like, if you go against the collective, if you go against the society, if you don't follow the rules, you're essentially a bad person. So these two together, we weren't taught to regulate our emotions. Well, we were taught to regulate them in a very stiff sort of box. That means that when someone asks you, how are you, you say, I'm good, thanks. Now, I found that when I was living in England, they had a different version of this, and they used humor as the sort of overflow valve that they got their frustrations out. They had a lot more rituals about friendly arguments with people, rebellion against society in a certain way, joking rebellion. So everything sort of is regulated by humor in England, whereas in Canada, it's a really uptight place. Not very funny at all in a lot of cases. The way people treat each other, the way people view their life is not with a tinge of humor in many cases. And although there's some great comedians from Canada. And you have to realize that Canada was settled by the most puritanical people from the British Isles initially. They moved to the New World, to North America, to get away from all the heathens of the old world and all the craziness of the hustle and bustle of this, crammed little island, with all, the different, so they could have their own plot of land in North America, and they could, build their own little world there, their own little community of like-minded people, and get rid of all the noise that was not part of their little blue traditional society they want to build. So Canada was built on that sort of like idea of either like having your own individual plot of land or being a part of a community that's ideologically, purer than you would ever have in the old world, because, the towns were always closer together and stuff like that. And then when the American Revolution happened and the USA declared independence from the British Empire, all of the most conservative people, the loyalists from the USA, moved to Canada. Well, maybe not all of them, but great number of them, which reinforce this traditionalist sort of like, don't rock the boat, keep calm and carry on, stiff upper lip. England has so many expressions for this. And it's incredibly wounding. And it makes sense why people put armor on top of it. And the work then becomes learning to take that off in spite of our conditioning, with the hopes of embodying the true essence of who we are. Absolutely, but the wound will always still be there, right, underneath the armor. And it's how well you can turn that wound into a gift. And, traveling this world for the last, more than a decade and living in other countries and stuff like that, I've realized that, that place is always going to leave a mark on me. And the repression of my emotions and my work ethic is always going to be strong. And I'm doing my best to keep the good parts of that stuff and sort of like, toughen up in an emotional way. Definitely when I moved to Serbia, where people are so direct and so forthcoming with emotional outbursts, letting you know what they think and reacting based on, their whole thing. I mean, they're very much blue on here, and they have their orderly society, but it's one that's not repressed. It's like, so it was interesting. And now going other places, also very interesting. Living in England, getting to the roots of all this, also very interesting. And so basically, doing the best I can to go through this. And like this year, a lot more people in North America are forced to confront this stuff because times are hard. It's not clear what's going on. It's not clear what the best thing to believe is in North America right now. It's not clear. It's definitely not clear that the system that we've got now, especially in things like the food system, the medical system, the mental health system, the legal system, all that stuff is serving us the best, and it's our generation's, us millennials. I'm at the start of the millennial. I was born in '83. It's our job to bring some new stuff, but remember that our parents tried and very much failed. They ended up regressing. They ended up starting with this green hippie movement in the 60s and 70s, and they regressed to this, which is just like, fuck it, let's make lots of money. And so they tried and failed, but we have, you know, the wisdom that came from their success and failures in that area handed down to us. You know, the ideas my father gave me very much embodied the hippie time that he grew up in, and also the you know, World War II time that his parents grew up in, and the communism post that you know, parts of our family went through and that they escaped, and the wisdom from all of that. So you have to take the wisdom, but realize what we are here to do is make a more humane system, because more than ever before, people got stuff to eat, people have, you know, the basic necessities in this world taken care of. More and more poverty is vanishing. Now we need to work on this wounding and this selfishness that brought us to this level. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, whoever's watching out there, and thank you to Misha for inspiring me to share all this. Catch you guys later.